Welcome back to This Is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Commander, tough rules, and cool interactions, episode 189. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the new cards that's releasing in Edge of Eternities, and it does something in a way that we've never seen before in the specific way that it does it. I feel that the card will be used in a lot of decks because of its potential for power, and therefore it will lead to a whole lot of questions around it, especially one very specific interaction with one particular card that inspired me to make this episode. So let's jump right into it. The card is Xu-Ifit Osteoharmonist. That is a name. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but also Osteoharmonist is pretty cool. Doesn't that mean like a bone musician? They harmonize with osteo, doesn't that mean, but whatever. It's a legendary creature with the activated ability of tap to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a skeleton in addition to its other types, and it has no abilities. Activate only as a sorcery. So that's it. Which is why you might think that it's just another card like many that we've seen with activated abilities to reanimate a creature, like on Whisper Blood Liturgist, Doomed Necromancer, and even something as far back in Legends set, 1994, with Hell's Caretaker. But the Osteoharmonist does it in just a bit of a different way. It does say that it's a skeleton in addition to its other types, which we'll get to that in just a little bit. But the main thing that stands out to me, at least, in making it a complex card, is the text saying that it has no abilities, referring to the skeleton that it brings back. But what does that actually mean? When exactly does it lose those abilities? Experienced Magic players and those who have been following this channel for a while now will know that there is a big difference for when things happen in Magic, because there's a big difference between something like a triggered ability and a replacement effect. Something like a triggered ability looks back in time to see if that trigger event took place, but then a replacement effect looks forward in time to see if that event is going to happen, and then it is going to be replaced with the new event as defined by that replacement effect. So something like the difference between Amulet of Vigor and Spelunking. Spelunking contains a replacement effect, as is the text for it entering tapped on a card like Evendo, Waking Haven from the new set. So you will have it enter tapped, and then you can replace that with it entering untapped due to the Spelunking. But having multiple Spelunkings is practically redundant and doesn't actually help you out anymore. Whereas with the Amulet, if you have two of them, or even more, but if you have two of them in play, then the Evendo is played. Well, now there are two triggers on the stack waiting to resolve. You can let the first trigger resolve, which untaps the Evendo, and then you can tap it, floating a mana, and then you can let the second trigger resolve, and now you can tap it again to float a second mana. So what does this actually mean for Xu-Ifit? Well, his effect doesn't state that the object enters and then becomes a skeleton and loses all abilities. If so, if it did say that, well, then triggers and replacement effects would actually still work. When you activate him targeting something like a Rampant Rejuvenator, the Rampant Rejuvenator has a replacement effect for how it enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. But now it has no abilities for how it enters, so it will just enter as a 0/0 creature, and then once state-based actions are checked, it will be sent back to the graveyard. This would be a similar result to something like an Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. She has a characteristic-defining ability that defines her power and toughness in any zone in the game, not just the battlefield, but because of the wording on Xu-Ifit, she would enter without that CDA and die when the state-based actions are checked. This also means that you can't use it to bring back a clone from your graveyard and have that clone enter as a copy of some other creature on the battlefield with like a crazy high power and toughness. Or, for example, of another card from the same Edge of Eternities set, Famished Worldsire has a Devour Land ability, which lets you sacrifice lands as it enters, but it will not have that Devour ability as it enters, and it will just enter as a 0/0 like the Clone and these other examples where all these creatures are just 0/0s that die. I've seen a little bit of discussion on this matter when talking about layers, and, well, it gets into some kind of tricky things with that. If a creature has an ability that applies in an earlier layer than layer 6, which is the ability layer, their ability doesn't still work. Like if you reanimate a Bello, Bard of the Brambles, he will not still animate your cards because his ability is actually applying in an earlier layer. However, speaking of still having abilities, if you bring back a creature with the Xu-Ifit and then play a card like Archetype of Finality, then your reanimated skeleton will have that Death Touch ability given to it. Xu-Ifit does not stop your reanimated creatures from further gaining abilities down the line. However, if you already control the archetype and then bring the creature back as a skeleton, it will sadly not have that Death Touch. And of course, reanimating the actual archetype itself would mean that no Death Touch for itself or any of your other creatures. The next thing that I want to cover is a really wild interaction, and this one is the one that I was talking about, the main reason that I wanted to put this episode together. It's a really, really weird kind of thing. The card Grist the Hunger Tide is a planeswalker, but only sometimes. He has an ability that says, as long as Grist isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. So this means that while it's in your graveyard, the Grist is a creature, and that means it is a legal target for Xu-Ifit's ability, and it will resolve. But what actually happens when it does resolve? Let's start with the loyalty aspect of this. Planeswalkers have an intrinsic ability granted to them by the game's rules, and it is in the comprehensive rules under section 306.5b that says, a Planeswalker has the intrinsic ability, this permanent enters with a number of loyalty counters on it equal to its printed loyalty number. This ability creates a replacement effect. Now, as I covered earlier in the video, Xu-Ifit's ability brings things back in such a way that they won't have abilities. They won't have a replacement effect, even if it's just an intrinsic one not actually printed on the card. So we'll have a card come back with 0 loyalty, and that's not good for Planeswalkers. The next time SBAs, state-based actions, are checked, Grist will go back to the graveyard because he is a Planeswalker with 0 loyalty on him. But does this mean that Grist can go infinite when you have something out like an Intruder Alarm and a drain effect like Blood Artist to infinitely drain your opponents? Well, Intruder Alarm says that whenever a creature enters, untap all creatures. For some of the earlier cards that I talked about in the video, you could pull off some shenanigans, but sadly, this will not work for the Grist. The ability on Xu-Ifit says it brings them back as a skeleton in addition to its other types, but it does not say brings them back as a skeleton creature in addition to its other types. So it will not come back at all as a creature to trigger the alarm for its enters, nor when it dies and then going back to the graveyard will it trigger the Blood Artist, because it won't see it as a creature. Nor would something trigger like a card like Species Specialist if you chose Skeleton. The reasoning for this is in CR 205.3d that says an object can't gain a subtype that doesn't correspond to one of that object's types. And the Grist will only be a Planeswalker while on the battlefield, not a creature, and Skeleton is not one of the subtypes of the Planeswalker type. It is only a subtype of creature types. On the bright side, it would at least trigger your Karth the Lion, if you happen to have that out. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. And as I'm saying this, usually I would sign off with my ta-ta, but I also realized I forgot to put in a section about wanting y'all's input. These were just some of the examples that I could think of with this Xu-Ifit card, and again, I hope I am pronouncing Xu-Ifit correctly. I was debating while writing my script whether I should refer to him more often as Xu-Ifit or Osteoharmonist. But since he's a legendary creature, I figured Xu-Ifit was appropriate there. So yeah, Xu-Ifit, are you guys planning on building him with him being legendary? Do you actually want to build that? It seems kind of weird as a mono-black commander because the skeletons that you bring back, you obviously want to flicker them, and you don't really get access to that in black. You get a lot of those effects to where, like, the next time the creature would die, you bring it back as a triggered ability, so that's a way to kind of loop creatures and bring them back and cheat the cost and stuff. But he just seems really powerful. Just straight up tap to bring something back is really, really cool. I think that would be quite an interesting creature, but if you plan to put him in a flicker deck or something like that, I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. So are there any other cards that you guys can think of that have weird interactions where the fact that this guy brings them back without... it just now hit me. What's it called? Phyrexian Dreadnought? Is that it? Typing with one hand because I'm still holding my pop filter. Phyrexian... No, it's not Obliterator. Oh, what? No, I said Dreadnought. Phyrexian, not Obliterator. Dread. Is that it? Phyrexian Dread. Come on, search. Yeah, that is it. Yeah, the 12/12 Trampler for 1 mana. And it says, when this creature enters, sacrifice it unless you sacrifice any... Yeah, so it's not even... Yeah. So you actually could just actually play it. You don't need to, like, mill this or discard it or find some other weird means to get it to your graveyard. You could just play it for the 1 mana and then choose to sacrifice it for its triggered ability. So it goes to graveyard. Then you have this in your graveyard. Use Xu-Ifit to bring it back, and it comes back as a 12/12 skeleton. Looks like Phyrexian Dreadnought skeleton. And because it doesn't have any abilities, you do lose the trample, which is a bummer. A 12/12 can just be easily chump blocked, but still, a 12/12 for 1 mana is nothing to scoff at if you're using things that care about, like, sacking creatures due to their the size of them. If you're looking at power toughness or something like that, if you want to fling them, or what's that green enchantment that brings things that you draw cards? The Greater Good. Sorry, I say it the Greater Good because of Hot Fuzz. The Greater Good. But yeah, something like that. I should have put that earlier in the video because I don't know how many people stay for these little weird rants at the end. But I mean, actually, I kind of do know how many people stay. I can look at the statistics. Nobody ever stays. But that's not true. Not nobody. I think you lose like half of the people watching a video in the first like 30 seconds or something like that. But yeah, that's yeah. What other kind of like weird, crazy Man, I'm really bummed I didn't put that earlier in the video. Oh well. Yeah. Are there any other cool creatures that you can think of that come back? Eater of Days, maybe that one has an ETB. It's like a lot of creatures with like really, really negative effects with how they enter. That you could then bring them back somehow. That'd be pretty interesting if they've got a lot of power toughness. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this one. Have a good one. Ta-ta.